Hi, my name is Melissa Frazen, and I work at the University of Illinois at Chicago in the Career Services office. And our office has put together a short video workshop to help current students and recent alumni know how to plan an impactful and productive gap year experience. We know it can be a little confusing and sometimes overwhelming to figure out what a gap year is and how you might spend your time. So we hope that this workshop will give you some ideas and best practices to help you get started. This is our agenda for what we're going to cover in this online workshop. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about UIC Career Services to make sure you know how the office can support you as you're planning a gap year. Also, we'll talk about the importance of defining goals for your gap year, things to consider when you're taking a gap year, and some basics about AmeriCorps, fellowships, and also about teaching abroad. I want to talk briefly about UIC Career Services, which is the office where I work, and also the office that put together this workshop. So our office is located in the Student Services Building in SSB on the 3rd floor. SSB is the same building where financial aid is located, and we're at the corner of Harrison and Racine at 1200 West Harrison. Our office offers walk-in career advising appointments, workshops, and also many career fairs every year. We help students and UIC alum achieve your career goals, even if you're not sure what those career goals are yet, and that's okay. You can find our website at careerservices.uic.edu. You can also call our office at 312-996-2300. You can make a career advising appointment when you call the office. You also can ask different questions if you have them when you call the office. So we provide assistance to students and alumni with, again, anything career related. So that could be gap year planning. Maybe you are applying for a job or an internship and you need some assistance with that. We assist students and alums with exploring different career options, including career assessments, which is when you may answer a number of different questions and we can learn more about your interests and your personality and try to help you find career options that could be a good fit for your interests. We also help students and alumni create resumes and cover letters and give feedback on those documents. We can assist students with networking, so that it can include making a LinkedIn profile and also informational interviewing, anything to help you expand your network. We also help students get prepared for interviews, including mock interviews, so we can do that in person. We also can do the mock interview and the preparation virtually. And we also help students with applying to graduate school, so researching different graduate school options, also reviewing graduate school personal statements or resumes that students are creating to apply to graduate school. What is a gap year? We get asked that question quite often from students and alums. So the easiest way to define a gap year is that it's an intentional experience spent between life stages. So notice that focus on intentional. It's planful. It's not hanging out on your parents' couch and playing video games for 6 months. It's okay not to know what you want to do during a gap year. You're not sure where to start. But the most important thing is to be planful, and that's what we're going to talk about in the next few slides. It's important to define your goals for taking a gap year, and you want to think as strategically as possible. Are you looking to gain career experience? Maybe you're trying to explore a particular career option. Maybe you're going to do an internship for 3 or 6 months. Maybe you're trying to strengthen research skills and abilities, or maybe you're trying to prepare for and apply to graduate school because you have to take a standardized test like the GRE or the MCAT or the LSAT. Maybe you're trying to make money or maybe save money or both. Maybe you're trying to volunteer with the AmeriCorps or the Peace Corps, some type of way of giving back. And other students and alums sometimes want to teach abroad, they want to travel abroad. So trying to figure out what your goal is for taking a gap year. And sometimes we may have multiple goals for taking a gap year. Like maybe if somebody wants to be a physician, they are trying to prepare for and take the MCAT. So they're studying for the MCAT, they're going to take the MCAT in their gap year. Or they also want to make and save money because they know they'll be going to medical school in the future, and they want to volunteer in a hospital or a healthcare setting. So you can maybe work in a retail position or maybe work as a waiter or waitress, save some money. in the evenings, study for the MCAT, and then take the MCAT later in the year, and volunteer a couple times a week, potentially at a hospital or another healthcare setting. So you can define your goals and then potentially combine them. Again, if you're not sure where to start, you can definitely contact UIC Career Services, make a career advising appointment, and get some assistance and guidance as you're working through your plan. These are the things you want to think about when you're considering a gap year program. The most important question is, how will the experience help you in the future? We've been talking about that already, about this idea of being planful and intentional. But you always want to think about how the experience will help you in the future. You also want to consider, does the program or experience, does it cost money? Do you actually get paid? How does that work and how much? If you need to figure out your housing, where will you live? Do you need to pay for housing? Will you be living at home? So maybe housing is not even an issue, but housing could be something for you to consider. Also, health insurance is something to consider. Is health insurance provided? What's included in that health insurance? If you're maybe going to be on your family's health insurance plan, it doesn't matter, but it could. It definitely depends on you. Also, how long is the experience or the program? Is it 6 months? Is it a year? Is it 2 years? You want to know what you're getting yourself into, so the length of the experience is important. Also, if you're applying to a program like a fellowship or like an AmeriCorps or the Peace Corps, it's important for you to find out what people generally do after they complete the program. A lot of different programs and fellowships have staff members, so you can reach out and find out what alums of that program do once they complete the program. Sometimes you can even talk to alums to learn more about what they did when they completed the program. So these are all things for you to consider when you're trying to figure out what you may be doing during your gap year experience. Students ask a lot what graduate schools and employers think about gap year experiences. And similar to what we've talked about already in this workshop, they're looking for intentionality. They want to see how your gap year experience is connected to your future career goals. And so you're going to have to communicate about that on your resume, potentially in graduate school personal statements and/or in job interviews or graduate school interviews, about how what you did in your gap year experience is connected to what you want to do in the future. So for example, if you volunteered at a hospital and you strengthened your research abilities because you're volunteering in a lab and you want to be a researcher in the future, you can talk about that in your personal statement or in an interview. Or maybe you did some volunteer work at a preschool and you strengthened your Spanish language abilities and you want to be a Spanish teacher in the future, you can talk about that in your personal statement or in interviews. So they're looking for intentionality and planfulness when they're looking to see what students and applicants did during their gap year experiences. As was mentioned earlier, it's likely you're going to be discussing your gap year experiences in interviews and/or potentially graduate school personal statements. And it's really important to focus on the skills that you gained and the experiences that you had. So we have an excerpt from someone's graduate school personal statement when they talk about their gap year experience. So it says, volunteering as an AmeriCorps member with high school students in New York City helped me become more comfortable with how to interact with individuals from different backgrounds than myself. And it also helped me strengthen my flexibility because every day was different and I had to adapt to different circumstances quickly. So that excerpt does a nice job of focusing on the skills that they gained, like they became more flexible, they were able to work with people from different backgrounds than themselves. And this person could have said something like, I worked with high school kids in New York City, it was fun, they are from lots of different backgrounds, and that wouldn't have been a bad personal statement, but this excerpt is a lot stronger and does a nice job of fully explaining the experiences they had and the skills that they gained. So that's something for you to keep in mind as you're thinking through your different gap year options. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about AmeriCorps and AmeriCorps-like programs, because a lot of recent college graduates will serve in AmeriCorps or AmeriCorps-type programs after they graduate, and that's actually what I did. So I think it's a great use of your time and can be a really meaningful experience. To give you some background, AmeriCorps is part of the federal government that encourages permanent residents and U.S. citizens to give back either to their own community or a different community in the United States. And how it works is you do service in exchange for a living stipend and a scholarship, which is called an education award. So you might get paid every 2 weeks, you might get paid monthly, and then you receive the educational award, again, which is like a scholarship at the end of your service. So you're not going to get rich being an AmeriCorps member. You don't get paid a ton of money, but it does come with health insurance, and that experience is really valuable and can go on your resume, and it's something you can talk about in interviews. Also, many graduate schools and employers are very impressed by individuals who served in AmeriCorps or AmeriCorps-like programs. Some graduate schools will even match the educational award. So if you do a full-time program, which is usually for 10 months or a year, you'll get about $6,000. There's some graduate schools that will give you an additional $6,000, so you actually have $12,000 to go to graduate school with. So that's just something that is a wonderful benefit. It's not the case for all graduate programs, but there are some programs that will give you a scholarship on top of your educational award, so it can be helpful if you're trying to fund graduate school. Another benefit of the program is that if you have any federal student loans, you can put them in forbearance, which means that you don't pay those loans monthly while you're in AmeriCorps. And then also, once you finish an AmeriCorps program, the federal government will actually pay the interest that accrued on any federal student loans, which is another nice benefit of being in the program. As far as the length of the program, it depends on the program. It could be a summer, it could be 6 months, it could be 10 months, it could be a year. So when you're doing your research, that's something you want to look into, just what is the length of the program, and is that a good fit for you? The last thing to say is that there are other programs like the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, the Peace Corps, the Lutheran Volunteer Corps that sound like AmeriCorps programs, but they're actually not. It's not bad that they're not AmeriCorps programs, but when you're researching, you just want to see if the program is AmeriCorps or not, just because there might be certain benefits that are offered in AmeriCorps programs that aren't offered in the other programs or vice versa. So just do your research so that you know what the programs offer and if they're a good fit for you. We're going to talk a little bit more about AmeriCorps to help you as you're researching programs to make sure you understand how different programs are organized. So there's a few different kinds of programs. One type of program is called AmeriCorps Vista, and this is considered indirect service, which means you might be working in an office setting, you might be recruiting volunteers, or maybe you're creating a newsletter for the organization, but you're not doing like the tutoring yourself or maybe building houses yourself. And it does require a 4-year undergraduate degree, and it's usually a year-long opportunity. Another type of program is called the AmeriCorps NCCC program, and this is direct service, and it's a team-based traveling program that's for 18 to 24-year-olds, and this is actually the program that I served in after I graduated from college. So it'll be based in an area of the country, and you and your team will be working on different projects, potentially 2-week projects all the way up to 2-month projects. You could be maintaining trails at a state or national park, you might be building houses, or you might be tutoring students. And then another kind of program is called the AmeriCorps State and National Programs. Sometimes this is abbreviated to SN, and like NCCC, this is a direct service program. So you could be tutoring students, you could be delivering meals to the elderly, you could be building houses. So that's to give you a sense of the different types of AmeriCorps programs out there, because it is easier for you to do research if you understand how they are structured. So now we are going to go on the My AmeriCorps website so that you can see how you can research and apply to different programs. There are other ways to research AmeriCorps programs online. I just think this one's the easiest. So if you go to My AmeriCorps and you scroll down to the bottom, one thing you can do on the site is you actually can apply to serve. So how the My AmeriCorps system works is that you would submit one application and it can get sent out to multiple programs, or it could get sent out to one program. It's kind of like maybe the Common App if you're applying to college. So that is one thing to know. And then the other thing that you can do on the site is you can search listings, and that's what we're going to do. So then this page tells us a little bit about the advanced listing site, gives us some more information, which is helpful. And we're going to scroll down and we're going to search by state. So we're going to try to search, I think we should search maybe for programs in Illinois, since we're located in Illinois. But there are thousands of AmeriCorps programs out there. If you wanted to go to Hawaii to be an AmeriCorps member, or Alaska, or Puerto Rico, you absolutely can. So there's other filters we can apply. We're going to apply children and youth. I think we should do community outreach and education. And then also you'll see that you could search a city if you wanted to. And then even up here, if you wanted to look for a full-time program or a part-time program, you can do that too. So we're going to go scroll to the bottom. We're going to go to search. And then it shows us all the programs that matched our filter. So if you look, there's 10 pages. So that's a lot of programs that match the filters we put in. And if you look, it has just a little bit about each program in this kind of the summary. It tells us what kind of program it is. So see, some programs are Vista. This one is state and national. And then it also tells you like when they're accepting applications. So that's helpful. We're going to pull up this one, the 2020 AmeriCorps Youth Serve. And then every program has a listing like this. It has a paragraph at the top. Sometimes it's a little bit longer than this one, but it just depends. There's member duties. And then here on the right, it tells us about the dates for how long the program is it full-time or part-time program, the educational level that's required, and then also when it's accepting applications, and then also tells us a person who works at an organization. It has their phone number, their email address, which is helpful, especially if you have some different questions for them. And then you also can click here to apply now if you want to apply to this program. So that's how you can use the My AmeriCorps website to search for programs you might be interested in, and also potentially to apply for programs as well. Now we're going to talk briefly about fellowships, because sometimes individuals graduate from undergraduate and they complete a fellowship for a year or two after they graduated. And the word fellowship is used in a lot of different contexts, can have a lot of different meanings. For the purpose of this presentation, a fellowship is something that you would do after you complete your undergraduate degree. And so the things to know about a fellowship is, the first thing is that often it includes funding for advanced study of an academic subject. So it could be a really large amount of money. It could cover like your living expenses. It could cover housing expenses for a year or more. Sometimes it's just for a summer, so then the funding isn't as much. It also depends on how competitive that fellowship is as far as how much funding is offered. And the length of the fellowship also can depend. So it could, again, be a couple of months. It could be a summer. It could be a year or more. So as you're researching, you want to see what that fellowship includes and how long it is. Usually the focus of a fellowship is the professional development of that fellow. A lot of times fellowships are research focused, but not always. It would depend on the program. And sometimes they can be international. So you might be moving to another country to complete that research and maybe live in another country during the fellowship. And the last thing to know about fellowships is that oftentimes the applications are pretty intense. Many times you're working on multiple essays, many times you need multiple letters of recommendation. And so it's not something that you usually can do like in a weekend or a week or even a month. It's usually a pretty long process, because you're going to want to get feedback on the essays that you're working on. And so just keep in mind that it's usually a long process when you're applying for a fellowship, especially if it's a very competitive national or international fellowship. Now I'm going to talk about the different support that UIC offers for students who are applying to fellowships. UIC has an Office of External Fellowships, OEF, and you can meet with staff in that office and get support as you are researching fellowships and applying to fellowships. They also coordinate UIC's application and nomination processes for highly competitive national and international fellowships. And some of the fellowships they help students apply for are the Fulbright, the Marshall, the Rhodes, Truman, and the Goldwater fellowships, but there's other ones as well. You can actually go on their website at oef.uic.edu to see a list of fellowship opportunities and also to get in touch with their staff. And their office is located in UH in University Hall. So that's some information for you about OEF and how they can support you if you're going to be applying for a fellowship. We want to talk briefly about teaching English abroad, as we know that some recent college graduates are interested in that. We want to make sure you have some information if you're thinking about choosing that option for after you graduate. So some common reasons to teach English in another country is maybe you're interested in a new culture and or you want to learn or enhance your skills in a new language. Maybe you want to travel a little bit if you teach English abroad. So a lot of times those are some things that motivate people to pursue this option. Also the opportunity to make a salary. In most countries, but not all, you might actually make a higher salary if you teach English abroad than if you participated like in an AmeriCorps program in the US. So that's something for you to consider. Another reason that people choose to teach English in another country is to grow professionally and personally, especially if you haven't ever lived in that country before, or maybe you've never taught before. The experience might really push you out of your comfort zone. You may learn and grow a lot as a result of choosing to teach English in another country. Something else for you to keep in mind is that some countries, but not all, might require the teaching English as a foreign language, the TEFL certification. So not every country requires it, but as you're researching, that might be something for you to keep in mind. And the TEFL qualifies you to teach English to non-native English speakers, and you can complete it online or in person, but sometimes you have to pay for it. And sometimes programs actually help you get the TEFL. Just something for you to keep in mind as you're researching and learning about potential opportunities to teach English in another country. We wanted to include some additional tips about teaching English abroad, especially things to consider when you're thinking about which country you do want to teach in. So for example, do you need the TEFL to teach in the country where you want to teach or not? Also look at the cost of living. Would you be able to afford expenses and or save money in that country? Some countries have a really high cost of living, some countries don't. So that's something for you to think about. Language is another thing to think about. Do you need to know another language to teach in that country, or is knowing English enough? Definitely something to consider. Another piece to think about is the culture of that country. How might you fit into that culture? Is that culture more individualistic, which is kind of similar to the United States? Is that culture more of a collectivist culture, more of a communal culture? Another thing to think through is the salary, and maybe doing some research on the average salary of teachers in that country. Another thing to think through is the length of time you would teach abroad. Do you want to teach abroad for 6 months, a year, multiple years? You want to consider that. Another thing to think through are the program costs. Does the program cover the flight from the US to wherever you'd be teaching? Do they include health insurance? Some programs may actually include housing or give you money for housing. So that is something for you to research and think through. You also want to think and do some research on the reputation of the program if you're potentially applying to a program, or maybe you're applying directly to a particular school. So you want to do some research, see some reviews of the school and or program. And lastly, you do want to look at citizenship requirements. Does the program or school require that you're a US citizen, or does it not matter if you're like a resident? So in closing, we wanted to give you just a few quick tips and reminders from today's workshop. So the first, of course, is to make sure that you define your goals for your gap year experience. And you also want to research different programs and different options so that you are clear on what your options are to make sure that what you want to do is a good fit for your goals. And of course, if you need assistance with planning your gap year experience, researching gap year experiences, or just any step in the process, please make sure you reach out to UIC Career Services, make a career advising appointment, and get some additional support. If you're thinking seriously about applying for a fellowship program, then reach out to the Office of External Fellowships so they can provide guidance and support as you work through that process. Thank you for taking the time to listen and to watch this workshop. We hope it was helpful for you, and good luck.